we pinging everyone again or no?
Yep.
Alright. I'm expecting a lot of live messages or questions
Better be.
rather than it's not that much before that. You have the pin somewhere, right? Yep. Where are all the questions? Hello? Stop staring at me with them big old eyes.
As with the last time, we'll wait a few minutes just to let people filter in. Double checking. We are, in fact, live on Twitch. Warp, can you use any slash commands? If you just type slash, does anything at all come up? Currently trying to get Warp to be able to use the TTS, so we don't have to read out every single one of his messages if he has something to say. I've given developer both slash command perms and TTS perms in this room. So if you can't see anything at all, skill issue?
Mm. Is it just gonna be me and you talking this time?
Perhaps.
No Wizred?
You see other slash commands. I don't know what to tell you then. Do we need slow mode in the chat channel? Stop asking about slow mode. Why does everyone always like, do we need slow mode? We never need slow mode. Do we need fast mode? Perhaps we do. Everyone is forced to type one message every 30 seconds, otherwise you get booted from the server. Alright, well, let's give it another 30 seconds maybe. Go to 2:05. So yeah, another 40 seconds. And then we'll get going. How's everyone doing today? Getting high and then playing the game? Okay.
But I'm getting low and playing the game.
L says Iraqi. Let's go. Oh, did I see someone's mic come off mute for a split second?
I did.
It let you change the room status? Yeah, I don't know what this whole room status thing is. I saw it yesterday. Like, anyone can change it? Come on, Discord. Another one of these features where you add it in, and it's like on by default, so no one knows what in the world it is. Yeah, like you change it.
Change
Wow.
that.
Let me check the. Is it a channel permission? I mean, I'm not gonna stop you guys, honestly, if you guys want to mess with it. I'm not seeing a permission for it.
No.
There's no permission for it. Thank you, Discord. Very cool. So just anyone in the room at all can change it.
Yeah.
This is just like when they added threads and like anyone could make a thread when they told no one it was happening. Oh hey, here's this new permission that basically lets anybody create any room they want on the server. You basically just gave everyone create channel permissions by default.
Yeah, I don't see anything but a permission for it.
Yeah. Alright, enough about complaining about Discord aside with how terrible they are with their new features. Welcome everyone to our second Campfire chat, Campfire dev chat. As with last time, wow, whoever did that is horrible. I heard an enter key, so was that you, Song?
No, no.
Still no way to turn off reply pings by default, says Doom. Yeah, it's hideous. Anyone on the Twitch stream is gonna have no idea what we're talking about with the channel status, because I'm not showing it. Anyway, though, back on topic. This is our second monthly Campfire dev chat. A reminder that what we plan to do is have these once a month, usually the first Saturday of the month, although we might change it here and there. Typically around this time, but again, the exact time might shift to allow other people to join in live who otherwise might not be able to at this time. And we just want to kind of talk about what's going on with the game, answer questions. A heads up that there is a submission box that was posted in announcements and has been posted in... did we post it in? Yeah, I posted it in stream notifications. For you to submit questions beforehand, and we will be able to go through those during this. We will also answer questions live from the Campfire chat room, and also from the Twitch channel chat if anyone is on there. So you don't need to submit your questions beforehand, but it does help to let us know how much we can expect to be able to talk about, and also so that you don't forget. If you remember a question, or if you have a question, you want to write it down, well, write it down in the submission box, and then we can also see it beforehand, and sometimes have a bit of a idea of what to answer. Let's say if you have a complex question, you're not putting us on the spot live. Yes, Sog has spammed it 3 times in the Campfire chat room.
If you do type it in the chat room, ping us so we can see it.
Yeah, we're not going to read through every single message that's posted in the chat room. If you really want something answered and you want to post it in the chat room, then go ahead and ping one of us. But yeah, so I am SirDerpyHorse. I am the lead developer. I'm met here with Sog, our artwork lead, and Warpcore, who's a bit of a flex dev. He does a lot of things. Content, balance, code. He's all over the place, a little bit like me. But last time we had Rizrad. He's not able to join us today. And it seems like he will not be able to join us for the rest of the year, unfortunately. He said that he's been getting rather busy with life as the year comes to a close. We might see other developers come in here in future dev chats, but it seems like this is our panel for today, is myself, Sog, and Warp. So do you guys have anything you want to add to this, or are we good to get going? Because I do have a bit of an agenda to talk about.
No, I think we're good. Just kind of another general chat. Nothing really specific.
All right. Anything from Warp? He will be typing. Hector says, Derpy has an agenda. You heard it here first, folks. I do. There's nothing you can stop me. Nothing you can do to stop me from enacting my agenda.
Hello, Mario in Twitch chat.
Juju says, lies, lies, and lies. Endless God doesn't exist. It's mass hallucination.
Where's that guy that said he was high again?
Shrike. He was getting high. It's different.
Alright.
Alright. Yeah, let's just, I guess, jump into what I wanted to talk about then. Let me actually pull up my agenda. So, I think the first thing to discuss is the announcement that was posted about an hour and a half ago from Hector. If you avert your gaze to the announcements room, Hector's going to be running a bit of an event over the course of the next few months here to help us update our artwork on the github.io website that we have, as well as on the Steam store page. If you've ever checked at the Steam store page any time at all, you'll know that the screenshots and videos there have not been updated in ages. They are still using... Actually, I think we did update the screenshots relatively recently, so they are using the new thumbnails in the shipyards. Maybe I should just pull up the game instead of...
That?
Yeah, I don't know if it was... I know that MCO has the
Um,
permissions to do that. It might have been
yeah.
someone gave him the screenshots and he's the one who updated them. So it's not completely out of date, but the video that's on there is very out of date. So we've talked about updating these for a while now. But Hector decided to make it, he was like, maybe we should make this a bit of a community event thing, get people involved who might not otherwise be involved with the game. So that's where we get this announcement of the first thing we're going to do is update the main banner image. I believe it is. Let me share my screen because I do have Steam up now. That's the correct screen, right? This image right here. And let me also switch it over on Twitch so that people can see what I'm looking at. Is that working on Twitch? Doesn't look like it. Thank you, OBS. Very cool.
Strike, I've never heard of a stage on Discord, so I don't want to touch it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're watching on Twitch, you can just go to to the store
Yeah.
page, I guess. But yeah. So I'll describe what I'm pointing to. If you go to the store page, you have your screenshots and your videos on the left side. And on the right side, you have the description of the game, the recent reviews, the total reviews, release date, developer and publisher information, the tags. And above that is a little image for the game. This is what we are going to be replacing. Is this image that says Endless Sky? It shows a berserker flying off with afterburners. It's got the main menu icon in the background along with a planet. You could have the chance to have your artwork here, something which represents the game. Keeping in mind that as the announcement states, please keep it within the rules. We want this to be vanilla artwork, or to represent vanilla. So I would suggest against trying to submit something with plugin content in it. Although it doesn't need to be, as you can see here, it doesn't need to be something from, it doesn't need to be a screenshot from the game, necessarily. I think this might be a screenshot from the game, but we have other artwork that is not just screenshots from the game. It can be just some sort of artistic representation, like, hold on, I could go to the, our GitHub banner is slightly different. Let me see if I can locate that.
Bro, that reminds me, you submit so many screenshots. That aside, if y'all want to just submit or just take screenshots in general and have it posted on the Endless Sky community page, that'd be awesome. Because a lot of posts on there are from many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So more like community screenshots or updated guides or like memes or whatever. That'd be cool if you guys can, if you're interested in that.
Yeah, because I feel like we used to have a lot more people posting on the
On Steam.
on the Steam artwork section
Yeah.
than we do now. There used to be a lot of stuff that got posted there. It was kind of funny.
If I go there now, it's all like really old.
Yeah.
Or
So this
similar.
is this is referring to if you go to the game, you go to the community hub. We all probably know of the discussion section. But there's also a screenshots and an artwork section you can upload stuff to.
Mhm.
So like one of the top memes is it's plankton on the bun. Not when I shift into maximum overdrive. The caption being, whenever you're going to be killed by a pirate and you have an afterburner. Currently has 247 upvotes. You could get your meme on the front page of the artwork section of Endless Sky very easily.
Hey, don't share my submission. That's not yours.
Oh, somebody trying to steal artwork.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so this is the current banner image that we have on GitHub. Now this one is a lot more recent, so I don't know if we're going to update this, but we could potentially have the same banner image in both locations, although the one concern is that they have different dimensions. So this is a much bigger image, it has a different aspect ratio as compared to the one on Steam. But, I mean...
No, actually, I have some comments for you slash Hector for that. Do you think there's ever a case where we're fine with some of the old imagery? Like, because obviously there's the ones that are outdated graphics or like thumbnail images and whatnot. But there might be some places where it's like, someone said Discord icon earlier. I mean, that one, I mean, that's not really been there a long time. That one was like last year, I think, after April Fools. But
Oh no, that. So I changed it for April Fools, then we changed it back to what it was before. That's been our
yeah.
image on Discord for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
I will note though the goal of this announcement and of this event is not to replace all of our artwork everywhere. We
Yeah.
are just at this moment trying to replace our public facing, like basically the first thing that a new player would see of the game, the stuff on Steam and the stuff on the game's website.
Rava, if I'm saying this right, the presentation video on Steam has been something we've going to change for a while now. We've had someone in the past make a trailer. I'm not sure if that's still up to date or anything, but it is something that we want to do eventually is have that trailer updated from like however many years old it is now.
Yeah, and as noted in the announcement, this is something we're going to be doing over the course of the next few months, but it's just
Mhm.
this month is that banner image that we just looked
Banners,
at.
yeah.
Eventually, we will talk about replacing the trailer that is on the game store page. If you have something in mind already, go ahead and get started with it. And hold on to it, and then once we're ready for such submissions, you can post it right away, because I do know that making good trailers can take time. But yes, that's
I
just something to keep in mind for the future.
I do want to bring up because someone actually mentioned this. I think Ty mentioned this. The one part of the game that is currently going undergoing a visual rework are the Quarg. So I would suggest avoiding using the older Quarg sets if possible for these kind of imagery.
Not the older, the existing Korg assets
Yeah, I'm
will become
sorry.
older.
Yes, the existing Quarg is going to eventually be reworked. There's already some models if you want to check it out. In Discord, there's a community project room called Quarg Revamp where Todd has done some of the Quarg designs. So if you actually want to use those in like a trailer or something, which I would suggest against this time around, but maybe later in the coming months. But yeah, if you're doing Korg, just keep that in mind. Probably move on to something different. But
Not to say that we will absolutely reject everything with the Korg in
yeah,
it, but we
so
don't want to have a bunch of Korg stuff being submitted and
yeah,
be like, well, we don't want to show too much of this because it's going to change relatively soon.
yep.
All right. Hector says,
Other
I'd
than
like
that,
to update most stuff if we can. The more community stuff we can showcase, the better, in my opinion. So, yeah.
yep.
All right. That's the updates there. Moving on from there, if you were not aware, there's going to be a new release at the end of this month.
Woo!
Currently we have the release slated for the 30th, so the very last day of the month. This will be version 0.10.3. It's going to be bringing a good amount of stuff with it. Ferocious asks, will the release include the AVGI? No, it will not. There's no way we're
No.
going to review all of that in less than a month. Talk to me for next release. So this is one of the unstable releases that we do, which is much larger in size. If you play the game through Steam, you will need to opt into the beta branch in order to play it. If you get the game through GitHub, then we'll just be getting it the way you always get it. Sure says I am unstable.
Shrek, the plan is to possibly look at the pirate intro PR for this release. I'm not sure about all the pirate variants in the game right now, though. That'll probably wait a little longer. The ones
Yeah,
that aren't used quite yet, but
yeah. Bearing in mind, with another month to go, there's still stuff that could get in that is not in yet. But
yep.
what I wanted to do was kind of talk about what's been done so far. What a bit of a patch notes preview, so to speak.
Bug
And
fixes.
yeah, now maybe I should have pulled out some specifics here,
Yeah,
but instead of scrolling through the entire thing, because I do have a bit of a preview
I
here
might.
so far. I will note, at least at the moment, this release is going to be a little light on new content, new missions and ships and outfits compared to older releases, but there are some larger things that we want to finish for the last month here. So don't fret if you were looking forward to 30 new missions and that's not quite in just yet. The one or some of the big things that I want to talk about for this release though are a lot of the UI quality of life improvements that have been made. Now, we have Flowers and Tom Good Idea to thank for a lot of these. Tom Good Idea being in chat right now. Shout out to you. So, for example, have you ever noticed that you cannot open the map when you are in the outfitter or the shipyard? You can do that now. Just like small things here and there, quality of life improvements that we kind of have looked at. We've updated the travel path. So when you open the map and you click on a system to go there, currently, if you're jumping with a hyperdrive or a jump drive between two systems, the travel path draws those the exact same way. Now, jumps with a jump drive will be drawn with a dashed line instead of with the solid line that we have right now. Now, this is not just if you have a jump drive, everything will be drawn dashed. It's if you are jumping between two systems which are not linked to one another, which means it requires a jump drive to jump across. That will use the dashed lines, I believe. What else?
Well, although there's not a lot of new content, there's a lot of content that edits current existing content. What's that?
Yeah, there's tweaks here and there to improve things. Lots of balance changes.
There's a lot of balance changes. I just really briefly wanted to say there's a lot of like small changes to free world missions. There's actually some additional missions I think earlier in the game for free worlds and some other human things. Balance wise though, yeah, there's the Marauder variants got balanced. Some fighters got a tiny tweak to them.
Yeah, for those of you who don't like to hear about nerfs, the Marauder, Leviathan, and the Falcon engine variants have gotten their bonus engine space slashed by a fair amount. So currently, both of those ships have 220 engine space. The Falcon has been brought down to 190, and the Leviathan's been brought down to 180. These being the Marauder engine variant. So if you just like the base Marauder variants, you're fine with those. And if you just like the base Falcon and Leviathan, those are fine. It's specifically the engine variants, which could move very, very, very quickly for a ship of that size. Which kind of rolls into plans that maybe we can talk about for future updates. But I kind of want to focus on this update for now. Not really get into what our plans are for 10.5, because that's still a bit off.
Another thing that was adjusted, high space trading has been pretty profitable over a long time. That was kind of tweaked a little bit to be a little bit lower. We're still looking at that though. So.
Yeah, as in the past, what you could do is get a massive trading fleet, travel to high space, and just trade to your heart's content with absolutely no fear at all of anything happening to you. Because only in human space is there a chance of raid fleets attacking you. But in high space, there was nothing. So what we've done is we've gone in, we've reduced the profit margins across high space so that it's not so free. You still will get a lot of money by going to high space and trading, but there's a trade-off in that it's slower than if you would have done it in human space. Although I don't know why SOG would go to another nerf. Like, how about we talk about some buffs? So, the Kahet Nullifier and the High Ion Cannon have both been buffed. The Ion Cannon, we gave a 20% increase in its ion and scrambling damage, because it kind of seemed like it is a very helpful weapon if you have a lot of ships using it all at once, but when you have just one ship using it, it could have used a bit of a buff. So we gave it a bit of a small 20% buff, and we'll see how that works out. But the Kahet Nullifier has essentially gotten a rework. In the past, or currently rather, the Nullifier deals 150 ion damage and 150 scrambling damage, which over the course of about 10 seconds, that causes you to lose about 1,500 energy from your batteries. The way that we've changed it is that we've almost entirely removed the scrambling damage. And if you don't know, what scrambling damage does is it causes your weapons to jam. So it's, in effect, a DPS debuff against anything that's been hit by scrambling damage. That's been lowered from 150 all the way down to 10. So the Nullifier will now far less often jam your weapons. But we've increased the ion damage from 150 to 220. So it's going to be draining a lot more energy after it hits you. But we've also added 3,200 energy damage. And the difference between energy damage and ion damage is a damage over time effect, where it drains your energy slowly over the course of, like I said, about 10 seconds. Then after that point, it's almost entirely bled off. But energy damage, just an instant, boom, 3,200 energy is gone from your batteries. So that gives it a lot more upfront kick to its power. Because it's not really a damaging weapon. The whole point of Nullifier is to, I mean, as the name kind of implies, nullify things. We've also gone in and buffed all of the smallest engines in the game. This is kind of getting, again, to the idea of we've nerfed the Falcon and Leviathan engine variants. We've buffed all of our smaller engines, and specifically the thrusters, I'll add. We've given tiny thrusters about an average of 23% more thrust, and then small thrusters is about 14% more, medium thrusters is about 5.5%, large thrusters have not been touched, but huge thrusters have been nerfed by about 5%. The goal of this is that right now, large ships are basically the be-all, end-all. Once you have a heavy warship, there's really nothing else you can do from there other than get a higher tier heavy warship, because heavy warships have it all. They have the health, they have the firepower, they even have the speed. Their heavy warships are incredibly quick at the moment. Very easy to handle. The problem this creates is that there's zero incentive to use anything lower than a heavy warship. There's almost zero incentive to fly a medium warship once you're capable of getting a heavy, or a light once you're capable of getting a medium, or an interceptor once you're capable of getting a light warship. Now, there should be some sense of progression, in that as you get further into the game, you get better and better stuff. But we don't really want a case of absolutely everything below you becomes completely useless. You should never even look or think about using it. There's also the point of the game is very brutal when you're in, like, an interceptor, for example. An interceptor really isn't too much quicker than a heavy warship, which is not the best, because as soon as a heavy warship shows up, you're dead. And Shrike says, interceptors insta-kill, you instantly die. Yeah, like, it's not the best at the moment. So the goal here is to, instead of making heavy warships better in almost every way, have more trade-offs. The main trade-off being the speed of your ship. So we're looking at making smaller ships like interceptors and light warships a lot quicker than they are right now, while making our heavy warships a fair bit slower. This has started with this increase in thrust to smaller engines with a slight nerf in thrust to larger engines, but we have a lot more that we're going to be looking at in a future update. So this is just a bit of a taster for what you can expect going forward. So one thing I'll add to something we have planned, or most likely are going to do. We're going to jack up the acceleration of the smallest ships, especially interceptors. I was playing recently a new pilot, and the Sparrow has a very high top speed these days. It's almost 1,000, which is really up there in terms of the max speed of ships. But its acceleration was, I think, only about 300, which means from a standstill, you would expect to take about 3 seconds to reach your max speed. But let's say you're already at your max speed and you want to turn around and go in the opposite direction. It's 6 seconds. It's 3 seconds to slow down, another 3 seconds to get back up to your max speed in the opposite direction. This makes playing with an interceptor feel almost sluggish. Like, even though it's a quick ship when you can get it going, it's not a very responsive ship. So what I would like to see is a case where if you're in an interceptor, you should have a much better capability of quickly changing where you are moving, which will also help with dodging things. Because one of the hardest things of dodging missiles or other large projectiles is you try and turn to move away from the projectile, but your momentum keeps you going in that direction, and the projectile still ends up hitting you. Shrek says, Blackbird is a good human ship to work towards. Sort of need a rock, paper, scissors scenario, though. Interceptors, medium warships, heavy warships. Yeah, that's kind of what we're trying to aim toward, is some situation where maybe not exactly rock, paper, scissors, because we're not really expecting, like what's the idea of rock, paper, scissors there? Yeah, Doomcore says that's not really ideal. Like, what is the heavy warship the rock, and then interceptors are the paper? What, are you expecting interceptors to beat heavy warships? Now, in large numbers they do, but on a 1v1, I think a heavy warship still should almost 100% of the time win against an interceptor. The point, though, is to have interceptors not be an instant death. They should have at least some capability of dealing damage to larger ships without instantly perishing. And the player should have the capability to pick their battles when you're in an interceptor. And speed is a big, important part of picking your battles. You need to be able to run from battles you can't win. And you also need to be able to have the capability to, if you do want to pick a battle, have the maneuverability to actually do something against your target. All right. Anything else on that topic that we want to add? It looks like Warp Core is gone. So it's just
Oh,
you and me and Sog.
you, me, and Sog. Who else is me? Yeah. Test Splicer on stream is talking about the increasing mass on heavy warships. So that's just something else we could maybe look at in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of those
This.
thrusters have been brought up, Boogeyman. I'm not sure if we're going to do that though. But
So, on the topic of lateral thrusters, something that I would like to avoid is having too many options almost. Now, like one thing that's been talked about with lateral thrusters is how do you activate those? What keys do we use? We already have a lot of keys taken up. There's not a lot of space for new keys to add lateral thrusters to the game. I've talked about if we do add lateral thrusters, maybe we only put them on interceptors for the purposes of making them more maneuverable. We wouldn't really want to have like super powerful lateral thrusters on heavy warships because then, well, that kind of gets back to the point of heavy warships are too maneuverable. I would like us to make the acceleration changes first and then see where that leads us. I don't want to right at the gate say we will be adding lateral thrusters, blah, blah, blah. Ferocious says, 3 seconds to get to top speed, 6 seconds to fully turn around. Notably, drag reduces the time it takes to get from top speed back to 0. So about 3 seconds to get close enough to top speed, and more like 2 seconds to get back to 0. Though you'd have to actually test it to confirm the exact numbers. Yeah, we're not throwing around exact numbers. It's just the point kind of stands though that acceleration is very low at the moment on our smaller ships. The Splicer on Twitch says perhaps heavy warships should have low issues decelerating due to their mass.
yeah,
The word low was supposed to not be in that sentence. Or it should have issues decelerating due to their mass. Well, yeah, that would be. That's kind of the idea. If we're reducing. It's not just. We don't want to just increase acceleration on small ships. We want to reduce acceleration on large ships. Part of that being we will increase the mass of heavy warships so that they do feel heavy. A point that I brought up last night that I saw Ferocious put a heart on. If you look at the mass of a ship, like the total mass of a ship relative to its outfit space, interceptors in human space, the average is about 0.62. So that says that for every ton of mass that an interceptor has, it has 0.62 outfit space. That same metric for heavy warships is 0.49. So for about every ton, half of that is outfit space, which is hardly lower than interceptors, which kind of shows that there's almost no scaling issues as you increase in size between or going from an interceptor to a heavy warship. So we're probably going to bring that ratio a lot lower for heavy warships. Something that was talked about by, I think Hector said, maybe triple the mass of heavy warships. I said maybe we double it, maybe 2.5. We're going to be playing with the numbers for not this upcoming major update, but the one after that to see how things work out. Azure says 10 exit, realistic sizes? No. 100 exits to strike? Also no.
So we'll look at say what Shrike said here. We need a few more carriers. So we're not going to be adding really many more human ships to the game, but I will say, and this will kind of help segment to something else. There is a ship in the files that we are not using quite yet, but it's called the Sunder, and it's this small ship. It's like a little bit bigger than it's like Clipper size, and it's going to have 2 drone slots on it. It's going to be a mining ship in the future, and that'll be kind of like another. It'll be probably one of the first drone carrying ships, I think, other than like what the cruiser and the carrier. So that'll be good to have. And yeah, exactly. It leads right into the mining rework, which is something I like to see in the future. it's something we have planned. I'm not sure when yet, but something to look forward to at least.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get back to this update.
Yeah, hold on. Doom says it's worth being cautious, though. We don't want to overdo things and end up with Star Wars combat, where only fighters and
Yeah.
interceptors matter and everything else is just exploding scenery. This is correct. We're not looking to completely flip the game on its head and now the smallest ships are the best instead of the biggest ships being the best.
Mhm.
The point is to have trade-offs. There needs to be situations in which heavy warships are the best thing to choose. And those might actually be most of the time, but there needs to be something where an interceptor becomes the choice that you might make. Maybe not specifically an interceptor, maybe a light warship instead, but some smaller ship than a heavy warship should be something you choose some of the time.
I do want to add to that though. Keeping the light warship, medium warship, or similar thing out of this. We're not. The goal is not to make every single ship in the game viable in some way or another. There are going to be like some human ships that may be worse off than others. Maybe they have some sort of niche they fit, but the goal isn't to like take every human interceptor and make them all really good and all like on equal terms with one another. So we still like to have that kind of variance in them, both lore wise, maybe location wise, affordability, stuff like that. Not necessarily they're all the same combat level.
Yeah, we're not talking about making every specific ship fit in every single scenario. We're talking about classes of ships, categories of ships here.
Yep.
So it's a bit broader. All right.
All right.
Why can't my barb beat a Tempest? Skill issue, that's why. Let me see if there's any other big updates in terms of balance that we want to talk about. Sog already mentioned there were some slight tweaks to fighters. So the Dagger has 5 more engine space now to give it a bit of an edge in terms of speed compared to other fighters. What else? The Violent Spider has been given 4 more weapon space, that being an unfettered fighter, so that it can equip both a turret and a gun at the same time without being completely crippled or having to choose one or the other. And then we've also combined the 2 barb variants. So in the past there was a turret barb and then a proton gun barb. The only difference between the two was 4 weapon space and a turret mount. And I was kind of asking the question, well, why do we have 2 variants? If we just made them one gun or one fighter with a gun, a turret, and 28 weapon space, would that cause any problems? And the answer is really no, because the barb is on its own not even the best fighter in human space. Having both a gun and a turret mount with 28 weapon space gives you some interesting options, gives you some hefty firepower for a fighter, but the barb is also the slowest of the human fighters, not counting the boxwing, which is not even a combat fighter. So if you want to try out the barb now and see how it works out, I said we might even buff it a bit more in the future in other ways to give it a bit more of a niche compared to the other human fighters, kind of like how we just buffed the dagger. And I think Zidchaz is looking at ways to tweak the lance to make it a bit more interesting. But we want the fighters to fill a bit more of a niche compared to the other fighters. Derpy just hates the Syndicus, is sure. I have no idea where the slander comes from. Shrike says the boxing was not a combat fighter if you're a pussy. It's only not for combat if you're weak. But yeah.
All right. Should we go on to the questions?
Yeah, I think that's kind of everything to talk about in terms of balance changes. We talked about UI improvements that are coming. Of course, you will be able to read the whole patch notes once it is live. If you're keen enough, you can actually find them on one of my branches on GitHub, because I currently have a branch that has all of the updates on them already. Just kind of skimming through. If you're a content creator and you've hated the fact that we don't have display names on ships, you can now do that. Also, thanks to Tom, good idea there. Ships can now have display names for their model. Before, we could not. Any of you plugin creators, there's now a new metadata file for plugins. Currently, we have an about .txt file that you can put a description of your plugin in. There's now a new plugin.txt file where you can put the name and the description of your plugin in, and all future metadata additions to plugins will be added to this file. So right now, if you go to the plugin menu in-game, the name that displays for a plugin is the name of the folder that it comes from. There's no way for somebody to have a different folder name than they have for the plugin name. This plugins.txt file allows you to do that. And we'll also probably add stuff like version numbers in there and all sorts of other metadata so that you can see more information about a plugin in-game in the future instead of it all needing to be shoved into the description, which at the moment has very limited space. What else? Anything changed that would be interesting?
It's not really interesting. Another little neat UI
thing
Tom did was
okay, go ahead.
I don't know if it's the same one you're going to talk about because he's done a lot of UI ones, but
I mean, if you got something
if you hail a ship that has fighters and they're visible, you can now see them if they're attached to the ships, like a hauler. Mm-hmm. I think that was long overdue.
And then this is going to be a bit of a shakeup. I think I saw Hector in chat say earlier, you're obligated to nerf the flamethrower. Well, here's the flamethrower nerf. Thanks to Quantum Shark, otherwise known as Doomcorth here on Discord, cooling is now no longer disabled for overheated ships.
Oh, yes.
So at the moment, when a ship becomes overheated, all of its systems shut down. And the only way a ship can become not overheated anymore is if it dissipates its heat away. And heat dissipation is a lot slower than cooling. But with the cooling outfits now still active, after a ship has become overheated, that means it will be a lot harder to keep an overheated ship overheated. If you've ever used the tactical scanner before and a bunch of flamethrowers, you've gone and burns up an enemy ship, you may have noticed that as soon as it's overheated, you can kick that heat percentage wildly high. So it'll be very difficult to reach 100%, but once you reach 100%, you'll shoot up to like 300%, like Shrike says. I've seen a ship go to 300% overheated and stay that way for like 5 minutes. So yeah, you can very easily kick up the heat value on ships right now, and then it takes a long time for that to drop back down because of the ship becoming overheated and disabling its cooling. No longer the case. So this is most likely going to be a massive nerf to overheating, the overheated mechanic. It probably means that you might be able to be a bit more liberal with how you outfit your ships in terms of how much cooling you have. That's kind of a knock-on effect of this. But the main impact is going to be that heat damage weapons are going to be a lot less powerful once you get to overheating the ship. They'll be stunned for a lot shorter of a time. And Hector posts a screenshot of a Skylark with 19,000% heat on it. And this is kind of an example of why this is not the best. Although, I don't know if this would change, because I don't think the Skylark has any cooling to begin with. For most ships, this will be... Yeah. We'll work on it. This guy's
so
definitely
another thing to keep in mind is it also kind of indirectly nerfs some of the chorus ships, too, which kind of needed a little bit of that kind of attention.
It buffs them.
Does it buff them?
Yeah,
no. I mean, they're heat weapons. They're infernos.
I mean, their heat weapons have never been their best for overheating anyway. I was thinking in terms of chorus ships are historically easy to overheat, but now this is not going to be as strong against them.
I just mean like the larger ones, because there's actually a question about this. Some of the larger ones, like there's like a battleship variant. It has a bunch of missiles that can do heat damage, a bunch of beams that do heat damage. So if it like is constantly shooting on something, it can keep it overheat for basically forever. Yeah, Infernos are pretty strong. I don't know what you're smoking. Apparently you're not smoking in your hull, but
I don't go and fight Korath. That's what it is. What are you?
But yeah, so. But those are kind of a little bit brought down indirectly because of that too. So hopefully that'll be a little bit easier on those who are fighting a billion chorus ships at once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, firestorms. Those are fun.
Yeah. I do have one other thing before we get to the questions though that were submitted. Now, last time we said that we were going to start making our everyone announcements and stream notifications instead of in the announcements room. Not too sure on that though. So should we do a quick poll on where you guys want these to be announced? Does it make sense to post things in announcements? Should we keep things in the stream notifications? The idea there was if somebody doesn't want to see the announcement, they can mute stream notifications if for whatever reason they don't want to come to these chats. But they would still get notifications for everything else. But at the same time, we do want people to show up to these. We do want interaction with people. We do want people to submit questions and ask them while we're here. So maybe we should just ping everyone. Time says no more pings. Shrike says ping is okay. The duality of man. Some people are like, don't ping me ever at all. I mean, to be fair, you can still hide everyone pings. You can mess with your notifications. Let's see. Enrage says ping everyone. Ernest also says ping everyone. Doom says I'm in favor of pinging. Alright, he says how many pongs instead? Or how about pongs instead?
I feel there's a decent amount of people in this channel and on the Twitch stream that otherwise wouldn't have known to come without an everyone ping. So, I'm for pings. A one person though.
Alright, I'm going to open a room here real quick. So everyone should be able to view this, but not add reactions or send messages.
You could
do a quick live poll. Alright, 1 is the announcements room, and 2 is the stream notifications room. And I will add reactions to this. So there is a new live poll room underneath the Campfire chat room that you all should be able to see. And we'll do our quick live poll of the people who are here. Ping in this chat, maybe? Ping in Campfire chat room. That I also thought of. Do we add a third option?
Yeah, I say that.
Messing with the... Okay, you all saw the third option be added. If you answered one of the first two, but you would now like to answer the third, please change your vote. Please only choose one vote. I will be auditing this. Kidding. Ping in every channel, says Doom. I don't think that's happening. Ah, that one shot up. So it looks like we're pinging in Campfire chat room now. I think that makes sense. Anytime we do have this new event category for stuff like this. So I think it does make sense. If we have an event and it has its own room, ping in that room.
And people can filter it out if they want.
Yeah. So for specific things, for specific events, yeah, those would be. So all future, this also sets a precedent, all future pings for the artwork submissions will occur in the artwork submissions room. We'll announce new events in the announcements room for the first time it happens, but then going forward, if there's a dedicated room for it, it'll be posted in that room. I think that makes sense. Alright, well that's far and away the highest vote getter there, so seems like the way to go.
Doesn't look like there's a lot of questions this time around, so I guess a lot of it will be live questions once we're done with that.
Yep. But yeah, getting on to the questions then. Have you ever got any donations? I haven't. People hate me.
No.
Kidding. So, we don't really do donations around here.
Yeah.
This is not a game that's intended to make money. This is just a hobby project for people to work on in their spare time and to have fun with. I've mentioned before how MCO does have something of a donation box, but the intention of that is for any server hosting that he has to do for James and any of the other stuff that he has. So MCO being the guy who works on the ES launcher, if that's something you use. And he also does a lot of our CI/CD stuff. In the past, he's described himself as the closest thing we have to a DevOps role, if you know what that is. I believe that's a quote from him. But yeah, so that's the only real donation box that we have. Otherwise, I'm not taking donations. I don't know if Sog is unless it's under the table. Same with Warp. I see he's back. Yeah, it's not really something we
Nah,
do.
it's a
If you want
community
to, if you
project.
want to like donate in the sense of helping us out, go advertise. Like talk to people about the game. Uh, if you have the ability to, like work on the game, make bug fixes, make content.
At the very
Even just
least,
reporting bugs is
feedback.
help.
Yep, feedback is your greatest donation.
Yep. Tell us how we're doing.
Call the phone number in the back of the truck and tell us how we're doing.
Yeah. All right. Next up, larger fleets can get extremely cluttered in the info tab. Could a scroll bar be added to get to the bottom faster? And perhaps a separate squadrons mechanic where you can create drop-down menus for different ships. Oh, this is very long.
Yeah.
Pose. Hey Hector, can you add word wrap to the? I think it's yeah, add a word wrap so it doesn't expand all the way to the side.
Copy paste it.
Yeah, I've got to because for whatever reason, Google Sheets is a pain when you're dealing with
Yeah.
long messages. All right, where was I? Kind of like a folder on a phone where multiple apps can take one spot. This would help a lot, as many ships in the fleet are standardized to have the same outfits, so only the ship chassis is different. But I don't really need to see each individual one except to make sure none of them have been destroyed. Thanks. Now, I have thought of making some sort of collapsible menu for fighters and drones specifically. It would show which fighters and drones are parented to which ship. The one problem with that is that the parent of a drone or a fighter can change depending on its closest carrier. So I'm not exactly sure how we would update the list of ships to reflect that perfectly. If you want to get to the bottom of the list very quickly, I think that the page up and page down keys work. I believe you can also wrap. So if you go to the top of the screen and go up one more, it'll wrap you down to the bottom. If that's not the case, it should be. We should add that. Something I'll note, though, is that while we don't prevent you from having a massive fleet, it's also not really our goal is to have everyone have a massive fleet.
Yeah.
So while we will every so often add quality of life features to dealing with very large fleets, it's admittedly rather low priority. So you might see something that improves this in the future. I'm not promising it, though. This is really the type of thing that someone, if they're interested enough in it and they have the skills to do this, they should open a pull request that does this type of stuff.
Yep.
And then we'll look at it and merge it. We're not going to reject it on the grounds that, oh, this encourages large fleets and we don't want that. I think you should have a good quality of life when you are dealing with massive fleets. It's just that, again, it's not our focus, so it's unlikely that we'll put focus on such features like this. Shrike says, alternative RTS style UI for large fleets. Unlikely. That's another. So I don't think our combat style is going to change at all. We do have some RTS features when dealing with large fleets. You can group a set of escorts to a number key. So like in an RTS, you can do control, select your units, control 1. Now every time you hit 1, you select all of those units. Same thing with all the other number keys. You can select units and send give them commands to move to certain locations on the map. We already have our basic gather, hold fire, attack. If you select a subsection of your units and you send a fleet command, only that subsection of your units actually gets that command. If you don't have anything selected, everything gets the command. So you already do have a bit of an RTS style aspect to your escorts, but I don't think we're going to do an entire separate UI style if you do have a massive fleet. So it's not going to be after a certain point the game suddenly becomes an RTS. This isn't Spore. So.
Yeah, I know Warp's gonna get on me for this, but the game is based around a single ship right now with the fleets and it's like a fleet. If there's a fleet combat mission, the idea is your ship is a ship it takes to turn the tide. The entire game might not be balanced around that right now. So it's still a work in progress, but no, there's not gonna be no 200 size fleets being the main focus of the game.
A caveat I'll add to what Sog is saying: when we say something is designed around a single ship, it's specifically combat missions we're talking about.
Yeah,
So story combat missions are designed expecting that if you have a certain ship of a certain strength, your ship alone should be enough to turn the tides of battle. So, like, you'll have your friendly NPC escorts in the mission, and you have the hostiles you're supposed to take down. One ship alone, yours, should be enough to make it so that your side is the one who wins. If we pulled the player out and you just watch the battle unfold, most of the time, for most missions, your side should lose. Sometimes it is a bit closer to 50-50. Some missions probably need tweaked because they haven't been looked at in a while and there have been a lot of balance changes. Some missions are intended to have your side win all the time. Some missions are intended to have you lose all the time, and you should just get the hell out of Dodge. But we're not saying that you should never have a fleet.
no,
For example, when I play, I generally like to have a small fleet. I'll have my flagship, maybe 2-4 other ships to kind of tag along with me. I feel like once you have a massive fleet, the game gets boring. So I just don't like to play that way. But I do understand that some people do like to play that way. So we're not trying to like make it completely impossible to do that. Something that's been said is this is like a bit of a sandbox game. The intention is that you should have a lot of options of ways to play.
Yep. I just meant more so like what we're focused on. It's like fleet gameplay is something you can do. It's not we're gonna be like everyone's talking about fleet limits. No.
Yes.
Yes to no or yes to.
You'll see.
I see. But it's not like we're gonna go and put in a rule that says you can't have 200 ships because you can't have 200 ships.
Yeah.
But technically, the fleet limit right now is what your computer can handle.
Mm-hmm.
So like I know some plugins might like for fun have like 1,000 ship fleet. That will probably crash about half people's computer.
Something I do want to add is a fleet limit mechanic. It would just be off by default. And
or like a game rule.
yeah, well, that's what I just said. It's a mechanic. Yeah, sure, it would be a game rule specifically, but yeah, it's a fleet limit mechanic. And we could have something else that talks about is like difficulty settings potentially being a thing in the game. We would use game rules to modify what the difficulty of a save file is, and one of those could be some sort of fleet limit.
It might have to. I don't know. I guess that's kind of your opinion. Whether or not we do that later on once we have at least the main story completed.
Oh yeah, this is very
Then,
far off stuff I'm talking about here. That you're not do not expect this anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's just that at some point in the future, we want to have stuff like difficulty settings. We want to have stuff like optional fleet limits, and there's probably a bunch of other mechanics that we could have that's been talked about that, or like maybe if we add that, we make it an optional thing of some sort, some way to just kind of tweak your game experience. We would have our like base vanilla game experience that you could play through. Azure says, "Oh yeah, Derpy, thoughts on limited hull repair mechanics? I made a prototype a couple of weeks ago that basically lets you add an attribute that reduces your in-flight max HP by a certain amount for every hull HP repaired. I forget what that's called, but I've seen that in other games, and it has like there's a name for it. It's like a hull scarring. That's not what I've heard. It's like a combat. What's it? I don't know. But so the idea there, I guess to reword it, if you take 50% of the damage of your hull, you could only repair back up to 75%. Combat fatigue, says Hector. I think that's it. Combat fatigue. So you would only be able to repair back up to a certain point if your health at any point dropped so low. Azure says, I was thinking of nerfing Syscore's system cores by reducing their hull repair quality and drastically dropping remnant hull repair by giving it near perfect quality. Mm-hmm. I could actually see doing something like that. I wouldn't want it to be too punishing, but I could definitely see something like that happening. This is something that Zidchaz has actually talked about, is the fact that our regeneration gameplay is not in the best space at the moment. It's kind of the reverse of what it should be. So regeneration should be very helpful for smaller ships, for hit and run tactics, and it shouldn't mean too much for larger ships, because larger ships are always in combat. And let's say maybe you shouldn't expect your generators to be working at 100% capacity when they're constantly being pounded. But the reverse is true. For smaller ships, the regeneration rates are so low that you practically you don't even have regeneration in a practical sense. Like what? I'm repairing 12 shields per second on my interceptor. I have 1200. I have 1200 or 1300 shields. So it's almost 2 minutes to regenerate my shields. If I've regenerated my shields, my opponent is sure as hell regenerated their shields. So it should almost be the reverse, where smaller ships have higher regeneration rates than the larger ships. Todd says universal shield delay. I've thought of doing something like that, so that smaller ships start regenerating quicker than larger ships. And then we would also change the regeneration rates so that smaller ships also have the higher regeneration rates, or at least higher relative to their total shield capacity compared to the larger ships.
I will say, the Escape Velocity series did a lot of their fighters and small ships had like drastic shield regeneration, and the larger ones would not.
Mm-hmm. So just kind of stuff to look at.
Yeah.
The it kind of gets back to the idea we were talking about earlier with speeds, where right now bigger is better, always and forever. This is another one of those things where maybe in this certain aspect, interceptors are better. They regenerate their health quicker, so that they are a lot better at hit and run, which having higher accelerations, higher speeds also helps with that. So you maybe, given enough time and enough skill, you, the player, and an interceptor maybe could take on a heavy warship. Tybe says hit and run attackers aren't around for long enough for shield regeneration to matter much. Yeah. So, but if they're quicker, they get hit less, and when they do get hit, they regenerate that health quicker. Then hit and run would be a lot more viable.
It's still something to kind of just watch, like edits to AI and whatnot over the course of the development of the game too. So
yeah, AI is
it's not
always something
one
to
particular
improve.
field.
Shrek says David and Goliath mission when? I think we technically have one. There's a mission that you're only able to accept if you're in an interceptor or a light warship or something like that, and the opponent is in a medium or a heavy. I forget exactly which, but it's kind of designed as a David and Goliath mission. I think you can just leave and reject it though. Like if you can't take the guy on, you can just bail if you really want to. Bacon Slices says, in my opinion, I think there needs to be less accuracy with turrets, especially for turrets made for medium and heavy warships. That's something that has been discussed. Less accuracy. We've also talked about lower turn rates.
Yeah.
That is something to keep in mind. Strikes' projectile speeds can be looked at. I know someone, I forget if it was Azure or Ferocious or it might have been someone else, said something about heavy warships should generally have bigger ranges with their weapons. But with a bigger range, you're likely going to have lower velocity, so it's easier to dodge at those larger ranges. Tybe says, oh, by the way, has anyone noticed how inaccuracy is kind of broken? In what manner? Azure says, double the velocity or the lifetime of bigger projectiles, keep beams the same. Potentially. Shrek says, I'd love to see artillery-style weapons exclusive to heavy warships.
So with that,
Hector says inaccuracy is in a pixel offset, not a degree offset, if I recall correctly. So it can work unintuitively. Are you sure?
with what Shrike said, the goal isn't to add all these new different types of weapons in general. So like artillery versus short range versus. I saw someone earlier talking about why isn't there like a three weapon energy blaster turret or two or four. So it'd be more so adjusting what's currently in the game, but for something that's like a specific weapon type, I think that's better used for perhaps like a different faction. So like for example, I'll toot my own horn here. The Gegno are gonna have kind of like, well, they kind of already are. So maybe like with adjustments, they have these kind of artillery, kind of like cannons. I know some other things being worked on have similar longer ranges and whatnot, but it's not something we're just gonna add different types of weapons for just because. I just think
One
we should go
minute.
on to the next question now.
Yeah, so this we already touched on a bit. Will core ships be nerfed in the future? Some of the bigger ones are pretty
Oh, you,
unbalanced.
you jumped over the one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Um. Oh yeah. What do reviewers do? It's in the name.
The review content in a general manner.
So our reviewers, the capital R reviewer, are people who, in the past, we have noticed, provide good reviews to pull requests on GitHub. These comes in the form of commenting on the balance of things, spotting spelling and grammar mistakes. It also comes in the form of giving good story feedback, giving good feedback to the structure of code, spotting bugs, keeping the syntax in good order. Really just people who we noticed have helped out in the development process of the game and who we want to recognize. They get the reviewer role. They get the triage. They get triage permissions on GitHub, which means they can tag issues and pull requests. They can also close things if they really need to, although it should be used sparingly.
People generally understand where the vision of the game is.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a reviewer, you can help out on GitHub. Find some pull requests. Find what you're good at. Review things. Talk about things. It's cool stuff.
Everyone can be a reviewer. The reviewer roles are kind of a bit more like uh, professionalized in a way.
I've said it's kind of a recognition role.
Yeah.
So like, just because you don't have the reviewer role, doesn't mean you can't review.
Yep. Everyone can be a
Yeah,
reviewer.
and Hector says the reviewer role is much more about recognition than responsibility. Although we would
Yep.
like if you continued to review, which is why we gave you the role.
Yeah.
So there is
Please.
a bit of a responsibility to stick around in a sense, but otherwise, nah, it's not like we're going to call on you and be like, hey, we need you to. Well, here's your quota for the month. You need to review X number of pull requests. No, that doesn't happen.
Literally, no one likes secondaries. I love missiles. I'm tired of people telling them they suck. I love missiles.
Massive L for secondary weapon haters. Restocking missiles is hard though. It's really not though.
Yeah,
It doesn't take long to travel somewhere to pick up more missiles.
I understand like it can be a nuisance sometimes, but that's kind of what comes with the extra damage and whatnot. So I guess on that discussion, because I remember you were talking about it, Derpy. With the next question was saying how will the chorus ships be nerfed in the future, and including the bigger ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's not too much else to say.
they when they were first introduced, it was kind of a see how this goes sort of thing. It wasn't this is how strong they're going to be because it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. It was a generalized kind of balance, but since then the game has shifted in one direction or another, and there are so like with the heat weapons, for example, like the infernos and whatnot. Uh, and where I was going with trailing off that discussion, firelights and firestorms could definitely be looked at again for balance. So the idea with like firelights was that raiders have some sort of weapon that's not just a utility weapon. So like if a raider pops up in syndicate space, it could just get beat up by like six syndicate ships in a fleet because its weapons don't do damage. But in certain cases, firelights can be pretty strong. So yeah,
Uh, Your finder says, I think it shows what the variety, or that the variety is very successful. As some people argue option A is objectively better, and some people argue option B is objectively better. So yeah, the secondary weapon debate is always going to continue. Like this has been going on for
yeah,
years. We've buffed secondary weapons a fair few times, and any further, and I think they would just be straight up overpowered. And like Doomcore says, I honestly think some of the missile pods are a bit overpowered right now, and I actually
yeah.
agree. I think some of the secondary weapons are massively powerful.
It's
Um,
not so much the balance of the weapons that the concern usually is. It's usually having to get the ammo, which makes sense.
Yeah, but some people are like, "Oh, secondaries suck. I hate playing with them." But it's like, I mean, different styles of play. Kind of the same
Yeah.
thing with fighters. A lot of people are like fighters suck. There's some of us who are like, actually, you're just doing it wrong.
Fighters with missiles, especially early to mid game, so like with like an area or something, are actually pretty strong. But that's not to say that they can't still get like speed balances like we've been talking about earlier or shielding balances. But I don't think, personally, I don't think they're as bad as everyone makes them out to be. But they could definitely use adjustments like we've been saying.
Yeah, any of the a lot of these like talks of making smaller ships stronger, and have a more place in the game's balance, that absolutely applies to fighters and drones as well. So, like I
Yeah.
was talking about increasing the acceleration on interceptors, that would also apply to fighters and drones. Talking about making it so that smaller ships regenerate quicker, so they can be a bit more hit and run, that would also apply to fighters and drones. So, we're not really looking at specifically fighters and drones for ways to buff them, because I think the issues that fighters and drones have isn't specific to them. So we have a lot more
It's
like,
connected to
yeah,
heavy
yeah.
warships being super strong as well. Yeah.
It's very very interconnected. So a lot of these ideas of, oh, just buff fighters by making it so they can't get destroyed or they return to the carrier. It's like, well, I feel like it's almost an overcorrection.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I don't think we should be giving any ship class an explicit advantage over the others that they don't have. So,
And
or mechanic wise at least.
yeah, yeah. And
But,
kind of again getting back to this idea that some people like secondary, some people don't. The goal isn't really to make everything viable for everyone. It's just to make
yep.
everything viable. And not specifically everything, but everything should have its place. And a player's play style plays into that. Your play style might not include secondaries or fighters or drones. These weapons and playstyles are always going to have upkeep. Secondary weapons, you're always going to need to buy new ammo. Fighters and drones, you're always going to need to replace your fighters and drones. Now, maybe we'll make it so it's easier to get ammo, easier to replace the fighters and drones, but there is that maintenance cost there that is probably always going to be the case. But it kind of gets back into this idea of there's a give and a take. What makes secondary weapons better? They have higher DPS for their size compared to primary weapons. What makes fighters and drones better for what they do? Well, if you swarm a bigger ship, it actually makes it easier to take down. Sure, maybe you lose a few fighters and drones in the scuffle, but you can really punch above your weight class if you have like a medium warship and a few fighters and drones teeing off against a heavy warship. Solar Shade says the problem is that we have unique fighters, or extremely difficult to replace fighters and missiles. There are, so like especially when you get to alien content, yeah, some of those can be difficult to replace. But
Well,
again, I don't want to change how difficult it is to replace them. Or actually, for missiles, we might. For fighters, I think the goal is to make them harder to lose, but not make them harder to lose while also buffing their combat capabilities. And something that we've talked about potentially doing is making it so that once a fighter gets disabled, it kicks itself out of the combat area by maybe applying a very large amount of thrust in one direction away from the combat. That way, it's not caught in the crossfire of larger ships who are still in the battle, and it will drift off somewhere where it should be relatively safe. And if you win, you could go out there and pick it back up. So it wouldn't contribute any more to the battle than it already does. But once it does fulfill its purpose in the battle, you can pick it up later.
yeah, sure. I think that's what I was saying earlier. Turns to Petros are Sorella because they have stupid high regions. I I haven't played with them, so I don't know if you're talking about armor or shields, but I'm assuming that just created those based on the escape velocities idea of small ships have really strong shield regen,
Yeah.
which is like what we were saying. Like maybe we do that with fighters or some form of that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
when you look to Remnant stuff and, in some sense, Korth stuff, we have different balancing philosophies going on here.
mhm.
The Remnant stuff has very impressive regeneration rates. Maybe all fighters should have impressive regeneration rates instead of saying let's nerf the petrol in the turn. And then
Mhm.
the Korth secondary weapons are cracked. Maybe a bit too cracked, but it's kind of idea there. Shrek says damage reduction and damage resistances. Armor outfits, question mark.
Um,
Potentially.
not like overall for everybody,
Yeah.
but like as like maybe faction specific or something like that. But with the fighter thing, real quick, I did want to say, it is hard to get unique fighters right now, and that's partly due to, and I'm assuming it's partly Korath itself. Some alien factions don't have story in the game yet, so in the future, I'd imagine in the Korath campaign, yeah, you can go buy chasers, or in the Remnant one, you can go buy Remnant fighters. I'd see it with that. It's kind of you have to go back to Remnant space to use the Remnant fighters, or buy more if you lose them. But so it's like Derpy was saying, it's a matter of making it harder to lose them, not necessarily making them just better, like combat wise or um, rebuilding or something like that. Um, I'm gonna go to take the opportunity to go to the next question.
Go ahead.
What are just to say it because this part includes what you have to say. What are the current plans for the Wanderers? Um, so we have the marksmen in a small group in a community server that are kind of trying to think about what we do with Wanderers in the future. There's no real set plan at the moment right now, but we are kind of taking things in our own hands after MZ wrote the last of the bit of the Wanderers. I'm not exactly sure when we'll get to that, but I do know that we do want to kind of go through Wanderers as they are right now and probably balance some things, especially later in the story. But there are plans, and yes, there are a few ships in the files right now.
Watch the last VOD. Watch the
Yep.
last chat. We talked
That
about
was a
this.
pretty popular question.
We talked about this last time. But yeah, there are plans in place.
Yep.
And things will be worked on. Probably not, or definitely not this next coming update at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Probably not for the next major update after that, but maybe after that. So sometime in mid 2024, you might see some new Wanderer stuff going on. It depends on how things play out.
Yeah, we have high reveal to work on. Some things we talked about this patch is like coalition and pirate stuff. What's with that? This isn't a question, but reminder to clean your SSDs. It's what someone posted in as a question.
What's your opinion about people who just go for the best obtainable outfit and don't care about the story at all? I mean, go ahead, but the game has a story. We're gonna keep building on the story.
Yeah.
Just don't complain if the story gets in your way of getting the good outfits, because that's kind of it's a story-driven game.
Either that, or also don't say the story needs balancing because you have a really strong fleet at some given point, or something like that. You're allowed to do whatever you want. You can not care about the story at all and just play the game how you want to play it, and then the story can exist otherwise. Or you can play the game for the story, which is what we're mostly focused on, is the game's story, which I think is the main feature of Endless Sky, is what story it tells and how the player goes about that. But you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I have seen people though where it's like, I don't feel like this story, or I don't feel like the power of the thing you get at the end of the story justifies the story being so long. It's like, well, I didn't write the story for the reward. I wrote the story because I wanted to write a good story, and then I put a reward at the end of it. You know, like I wasn't saying, oh, I have this reward. It has this powers, therefore that justifies, about 10 missions. Like, that's not how we look at it.
Yeah, it's like Hector said, showing up to Freeways in a Kiv. Like, that's entirely possible. If someone does that, cool. That's a fun thing to do. But the story is the story, is what like Strike said. So, if people want to skip it or do something else, go ahead. I don't mind it. I don't think any of us mind it.
The Splicer on Twitch says, has 40 behemoths equipped with green lasers. Damn, this Earth storyline was way too easy. Please fix. All right, and then the last submission that we have. Can you guys figure out Discord permissions? Can Discord figure out Discord permissions? I think that's a better question. So
Refresh this real quick just in case.
I think
All
they're
right.
coming
No,
live
okay.
anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any other questions, go ahead and feel free to ping us in moderation in the chat room, preferably with something explained out rather than like 2 words.
Yeah. Pilot aging mechanic? No.
No.
So you can retire and have a new pilot at in the same save.
Huh.
What would the point of that be, though?
You'd still be following the story after the story.
Just roleplay. Imagine that you've retired. Have you considered doing a new game plus mode? What would that even entail? The game is so open-ended as is. The point of new game pluses in other games is to restart the game with all of the stuff you have from the end of the previous save file, correct? But you can already in game build up a massive fleet, grab tier 2, tier 3 tech, and then start the story. So
Shrek says maybe a new story. So like different starts are something we'd like to look at.
yeah.
It may not be a whole new different story, but like it's a different story for your character, where they come from or what they're doing.
New starts that unlock new storylines, says Time. Or that unlock after some storyline. Yeah, that's in the cards.
Yeah, and I would, like you just said, not like specifically for a specific story though. Everything should be accessible for a new player
I mean,
in some way.
I have thought of making starts that are like maybe there's a start that occurs or that sends you all the way back to like 2500 and you check out that time. It would probably be a much smaller galaxy. It'd almost be like a plug-in start.
Yeah,
But
I've actually
just
thought
like
of
tell
something similar to
stories of like older sections sections of the game's history, and then you have
that.
a
Actually,
smaller area. Maybe it's only human space and there's no way to escape, but just some stuff that kind of messes around with that.
I'd want to do that. Something I thought about for a plugin a long time from now would be having like backtracking to when the chorus were still around and lively before the automata were even there,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even relay stuff. Who knows? But, yeah. Can we have a pause button that lets us click on things and give orders?
Excuse me.
That was your answer.
Probably not, to be honest. That kind of again gets back into the RTS idea, which we don't want to like go super RTS-y.
There's been talk about slowing instead of speeding up, but I'm not sure about pausing.
Mm-hmm. Replace fast forward with slowdown, says Hector. There is a pull request that was open. I think it's been closed now, or it might just be lingering around. But it was changing up the way that the game runs its physics so that we could have frame rates other than 30 or 60 rather. But the physics would still run at 60. And then that kind of opened up the possibility of having different speeds that the game could run at instead of always being 1x or 3x, which would include slowdowns. I don't know where that went.
That.
Yeah.
Get rid of speed up. Don't need it. Time manipulation outfit? No.
Yeah, no.
We already made that. We went back in time, realized it was a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. We used it to fix our own mistakes. Alright. Anything else major to talk about? Because otherwise we might just wrap up in the next 5 minutes here. A bit of a shorter stream, but there wasn't as much to talk about.
I was talking about it yesterday, but I will say, for those of you who are like, we're Gigno content, we're Bunrodia content, I'll leave that one for Derpy, but Gigno content, I plan on having something for sure in the next content update. Not the one that's coming in a few weeks, but the one that comes in January, for sure.
Yeah. if the question is like where is X content for Y faction, like it's everything's being worked on in a sense. So it's just a matter of when it's ready. There's not really any focus of, oh, this is the update where we're going to work on this faction. This is the update where we're going to work on that faction. Because there's a lot of people who are contributing to the game. It's really just a matter of,
Yeah.
yeah, it's being worked on, okay? This is a warp. It's really just a matter of when things get finished, when people have time to
Yeah.
work on things and finish things, and then when the developers have time to review things and merge things.
So like factions and that kind of stuff is its own kind of animal. Meanwhile, the main focus of the game is like the three main campaigns, which we only have one still, as well as like content around that, like High and Wanderers and stuff like that. So factions are kind of when it comes, it comes. When content gets to it, it gets to it.
3 main campaigns. Talked about it last time. It's in the works.
Well, three sides of the main campaign, technically. Jeez.
Gassy today.
It's being worked on, okay? Yep. Once again.
The splicer on Twitch says inserts monkey looking at other monkey meme. Where content? Where banana? It's coming, okay? Again, getting back to like this is a hobby project. We're not making money off of this. Stuff just kind of happens as it happens. We're not gonna have. It's not like massive expansion coming in March of 2024. It's been worked on for the past 2 years by a team of 50 people. Like, nah, it's just not how we roll.
It's like the core work.
Yeah.
It finally happened, but the groundwork for it finally happened, and I'm gonna see it through the end. But it's only as much time as Todd has, or as much time as we have to review the new Korg stuff, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. Although
That's happening.
Labor Day weekend here in the U.S., I've got some extra time. Gonna see a lot of merges this weekend.
Ayo.
A lot of reviews. It looks like is Lemuria here? He's not here. It looks like he finally figured out how to get the date format for Quest working. So that might be a thing. Fishing mechanic, yo. I'm so for that. So, we could do something like that now, like unironically.
like inside like a spaceport.
Yeah, because I mean maybe not perfectly, but because one of the new mechanics coming with this next update is the ability to roll a random number between one whatever number you want. We have a random condition that you can put that only rolls between 0 and 99. With 0 and 100, where 100 is not included. That made it so that anytime you wanted to do anything, it had to be some clean multiple of 100. But now we can roll any number we want. So if you want a fishing mini game of some sort in a conversation, and you want really low odds for something to happen, I don't know.
Like doing this thing.
Play with it.
One of the EVs things was having like a little gamble menu for a way of making money or losing it. That'd be neat. And the Sky Gotcha minigame.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I was testing out the this rolling mechanic, I added a stupid little like death roll minigame. So if you don't know what death rolling is, one person rolls from 1 to whatever number you're rolling through for. The next person rolls the number that last person got. Whoever gets to 1 first loses. So like say I roll a 100 or 1 to 100 and it lands on 50. Next person has to roll 50. Maybe it lands on 30. Next person rolls 30. Like I roll 30. I land on 10. They roll the 10. Land on 5. I roll the 5. If I land on 1, I'm done. I just added that. And it would just update this condition for whatever the last roll was. And then roll from 1 to that number. It's kind of stupid. Just a small little thing.
Peacemaker has a good question. Is there any way to keep updated on how content development is progressing? It's getting worked on. It'll be ready when it is, but it would be nice to know when things are going. So, following the recent creation of the Endless Sky Manifesto, we'd like to have some sort of page on GitHub that shows, like in a general sense, what we're looking at in the future. So I'd say stay tuned in for that.
Yes.
Other than that, just kind of peek on GitHub. Come in Discord, look in the channels, especially content creating and things like that.
Yeah, I think the main thing at the moment is just checking GitHub,
Yeah.
seeing what pull requests are open, seeing what's been merged since the last release, checking up on change logs. But as Sog said, we want to have some central location that is a lot cleaner. Kind of takes all of this information from across all of the locations of the development of the game and puts it into one page we can go to and say, this is the progress on this section of the game. This is the progress in that section of the game. These are the plans. This is what's already done. This is what still needs to be done. Todd says also maybe you devs should update the ES blog page or something, because if I recall correctly, apparently someone actually checks that. Yeah, we do have access to the blog. And I do think we want to start using that more in the future. But yeah, we've noted how right now development is very scattered. And if you aren't following everything, then there's a lot of stuff that you are missing out on. Unless you're only looking for the updates of the game. But yeah, we're working on, or at least plan to work on things to make that a lot more streamlined. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. When we do have something, we will announce it in the server. It might not be an everyone ping, or it might be if we feel like it's that important, but we'll ping or just post announcements and say like, hey, this is the new location for this type of news. And you can just check that whenever you need to. Hooker quest when? What? Hookers quest when? Excuse me. Oh, blackjack and hookers.
Like,
never.
yeah, the game's kind of.
We got some off limits topics there.
Yeah.
Someone brought up hookers, and so this could be a quest, but probably not. Probably not. Nothing stopping you from making a plugin, but yeah, I'm a write up fishing mission says it's time.
Any other like major questions?
Doom
like,
says I was referencing Futurama. I will not do so again. I apologize.
Look what you did.
Horrible. The Splicer says, oh no, fishing, that minigame every game needs to have. Exactly. If we don't have a fishing minigame, are we even a video game?
We need to have like a in-game card game. Like a Hearthstone in the Sky Edition. Araki already made it some of the cards for that.
Also need the option to pet the dog. You already can. And the Pookie missions. So not in the first two, but in the follow-up, you can pet the dog. Puny, yeah. Puny, who may also be Pookie. We are unsure. What better way to end this chat than with a written apology? I sincerely apologize to everyone for being here. I know it was a terrible time.
Just redo the mission, Araki.
Alright. Yeah.
If the mission name is different, it doesn't just offer under that name again.
What do you mean you can't pet the dog? 0 out of 10. You can pet the dog. You can.
You could also technically jettison it out your cargo hold into space too, but don't do that.
If you're a horrible person, you could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sandbox game. No one's gonna stop you.
Genocide route.
Is there a dog quest? Yes, there is. So, this is a bit of a hint for you guys. When you finish the tutorial at the start of a new game, go to the spaceport on Hestia. As soon as you finish, you will be guaranteed to get the Pookie quest. Finish the Pookie quest, and then I think the next place you have to go is it Freedom? One of the pirate planets in the far north? Go to the spaceport there.
Huh?
And that's what lets you pet the dog. Dog pet speedrun any percent, says Ugly Kid Joe.
Also, if you're interested, and you want to add like a small mission series, be our guest. Like we love seeing more like these kind of not necessarily world building, but just these
Slice
passive
of
human
life.
missions. Yeah, slice of life.
Give me the slice of life missions.
Never enough of them,
Just small
especially for
stuff here
human
and there.
space.
Earfinder says there should be some way for players to discover what quests they're missing out on for some of them. Maybe through the hails that appear at the bottom of the screen. So the difficulty with the hails is twofold. One, we could modify which hails are present depending on what the player has and has not done through events. It'd be a bit of a pain to do that though. It's not
A
the
lot of
best way to
work.
do it. The second thing is that you're unlikely to see if a hail does show up. You're unlikely to see it. Do you read every single hail that you see, or that pops up in the bottom corner? I don't. I imagine most people don't. So we tend to not use the hails as a means of giving important information to the player. If there's something important that the player should know or be able to know, that should come from somewhere else. There
Like Tetris
has.
says.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just like Tetris says, you don't really want to push people towards quests.
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't want to. Something that comes up quite a lot is the idea of hand holding the player to like the main quests or certain places they have to go. We're not really gonna be doing any of that.
Hmm.
I know with free worlds, it's kind of a recurring issue of how do people find it because way back in the day, Derpy was one of the primary examples of that. Since then,
Can you
there's a
shut
lot
up?
of ways. Yeah, you could go on Steam and find it right now.
I can delete it too.
But there since then there's quite a lot of like kind of indirect ways of leading the player to there. There's like some spaceport reminders as well. But you also have to keep in mind, again, we're only 1/3 done with the main story, so there's still quite a lot to put in there. So a lot more things you can come across just by playing the game. Um, but yeah, a lot of it's kind of encountering these things rather than worrying about. At least I would say missing out on them.
Hmm.
Um, it's different experience for every person. So some people may find those things right away. Some people might not find them until a little later. So
Yeah, the intention is not to have this be an MMO RPG where you have quest markers everywhere, and every time you pick up a quest, it tells you like, "Hey, here's the exact steps you need to do, and this is the reward you're gonna get at the very end of the quest." Now, this is more. This is a very like open world type situation where if you want something, you have to go find it. If there's a quest that you're missing, you kind of have to go looking for it. Maybe for certain things, if it's very important, we'll have ways to point the player there. Like as Sog mentioned, we have the there's like a reminder to go to the spaceport if you haven't in forever for the first time, and there's we're talking about adding missions or already have added missions to point you toward the Free Worlds campaign a bit more clearly instead of right now where most of the galaxy is kind of nothing happens in it or nothing major happens in it
yeah,
because it's only that specific section of the galaxy you can start the main campaign at the moment. But yeah, that's just something that it's unlikely we'll get something specific where it's like, hey, here are the
mm,
missions you have, and here's the missions you don't need to do or haven't done yet. Turek says, we've been getting a bunch of new areas and people to meet over the last couple of updates, but will there be more events which alter or add to the known space? Kind of like what happened in the Free World's time or quest line, but on a bigger scale. I missed half of the stream, so sorry if you're repeating yourself. So are you, will there be more events which alter or add to the known space? Kind of like what happened in the Free World's quest line. So I imagine you're talking about the changes to the hyperspace lanes,
stuff like Pug.
and then the wormhole that leads you to that new region. Potentially.
Um,
Like hyperspace lanes and systems appearing and disappearing, yeah. There is actually a system that appears, or actually a couple systems that appear, in the Remnant and Kahet content. Post Verita appears and Patir appears when they previously were not visible. But in terms of even or like stuff in other locations or wider scale. There is small stuff here and there that might happen, but the thing with big events is that they require big storylines to kind of
Mhm.
justify them.
I will say, I don't want to show all my cards yet, but I do plan on doing some little things like that and getting those space too. But as for the entire map, our focus would still be to finish the main campaign and all three facets of that before we consider any like major map changes beyond that. I'm not sure if we'd extend the main quest beyond that either. That's a very far thing down the road. But everything's kind of focused on different perspectives of what is already currently happening in the main campaign. But for a big map thing, like the Return of the Pug or something like that, I don't know. Maybe like in the far future we look at something like that, but as for right now, probably not. But for like smaller places or speckled here and there throughout different areas, yeah, you can probably expect some of that sometimes. That happens.
Public campaign? Question mark.
Hey,
It's big word.
um, yeah, he said.
All right. Any other big questions? If not, I think we'll sign off here.
Double check submissions. Yep, we're good there. One more mug to be added. We need the art for the first one though. We haven't decided. No one's decided. You are welcome, twerk. If I said that right. Twerk.
Twerk.
Twerk. Spelled wrong.
Fresh magnet quest. Yeah, you just have a bunch of little quests. You collect all these knickknacks that stay on your ship forever. All right then. Seems like we're done here.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for coming. Once again, these will be a monthly event. First Saturday of the month is the plan. So the next time we will be meeting will be on October 7th, which will also be 1 week after the next update. So most likely we'll be talking about the update, getting feedback from you guys. But probably also talking about the next phase of the artwork event that has been announced, as we talked about. Then we'll also talk about plans for the future, even more plans. So what would be coming in 0.10.5? When's the next campfire? October 7th. So put an event on your calendars. If Vivari merged next? Question mark. Those aren't even open. October 7th? Yes, October 7th.
Yep.
You heard that correctly.
Yeah. The more questions, the better.
So yeah, once again, the submission box is open. Hector says, keep this channel unmuted if you want to hear about it. Correct,
Yes,
correct. We will now be announcing these events in this channel.
Good day, Spicer.
You should add a suggestions channel. I mean, we have GitHub. I think if you have a suggestion, you should post it on GitHub because we don't want to have too many locations where people can talk about things. Or not really talk about things, but like suggest things. We have bug reporting here and on GitHub. But if something major pops up here, we usually also open an issue on GitHub for it.
Yeah, mainly feature request issues on GitHub.
Yeah.
If you want to suggest something.
What we don't want, though, is a super easy place to suggest things because then we have 1,000 issues instead of 850.
Yeah. Then we have example 10 of when will we add super god races to kill the Archons or something.
Yeah. All right, well. Once again, thank you everyone for coming. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and see you next time.
See you.